G'day, I'm Nick Clemens from York US and welcome to our podcast Beyond the Guesstimate. I've been in the building industry since 1993, particularly around the residential construction sector, and pretty much that whole time I've been frustrated around how inefficient our industry is and just how it operates. And so what we're looking to do with this podcast is explore things around the concept that I call cost-informing design. So understanding the impact of costs on decisions, understanding decisions, how they work, how the industry works, and looking to talk to people that I think are interesting and have got value to add around how we can improve what we do. This week I got some bad news. We had a project that we'd been working on the end of last year, and I found out it wasn't going ahead. What was sad about it is the designer actually and the client went through what seemed like quite a good process. So they came up with a concept plan, they took it to a builder, got some ballpark estimates from the builder. It all came out about where the client was expecting it to be. They then went ahead, did engineering, consents, all that sort of stuff. The builder then looked at it, I guess, properly, and another builder looked at it, and it came out double what the original concept estimate was. So they'd got an early stage cost indication, but it wasn't that useful. And I think as an industry, that's a really bad outcome. So what happened was, of course, the client was struggling with it. They came to one of our builders. That builder then worked with them to come up with a reduced scope design, so a smaller design. Managed to get it in around $1 million or just a bit under $1 million. Unfortunately, the client was hoping for it to be around $800K and decided they just couldn't afford the risk of starting it and have it blow out and be more. So they ended up pulling the pin on it, and it cost them $100,000 because they would spend that much on fees and design and consenting and that sort of stuff to get to the point where they're at with something that they couldn't afford to carry on with. Fortunately, they own the land. They've had the land for a long time. Hopefully it'll come back in some form, but it's a lot of money down the drain. And yeah, it's not the first time we've had that story. So what I'm interested in and what we're going to talk to a bit today is just exploring the process around design decisions and how to get that cost feedback into it early on. I realise it's a difficult thing to do because what you're expecting the designer or anybody to do is actually understand what the cost's going to be before the design's done. So if it hasn't been designed, how can you cost it? So it's definitely a challenge, and it's part of the challenge as an industry we've got to, I think, do a better job of dealing with. And over that time, I don't know quite what went wrong with it. I obviously wasn't intimately involved with it. So maybe the builder didn't pay that much attention. Maybe they used a square metre rate to come up with a number. Maybe the design changed over time. Maybe it was during the COVID period. They might have estimated it early in the COVID, before the COVID rush happened, and prices went up by 25-30% over a really short period of time. I'm not exactly sure, but certainly the outcome is one that we want to try and avoid. So today we're going to be talking to a designer and looking to unpick a little bit around their process. Hopefully I'm not going to poke too much borax at them around this because it's, as I say, it's a challenging thing to do. So welcome to Sam Hodson from Modal Architecture. It's an interesting story with Sam. It turned out when we got talking that we got introduced through a builder that we'd worked with in Wellington, and when I got talking to that builder, it turns out that I used to work for his dad when I was a school kid, and I can remember when he was about 10 years old. So we've got a sort of indirect long connection back through the builder that we work with. So welcome, Sam.
Cheers. Thanks for having me.
So let's, before we dig into sort of a whole lot of this stuff, let's just get a bit of understanding about you and your background. So what got you into architecture? So what made you want to become a designer?
I don't know what originally made me interested, but around the age of 14 or 15, I just got really into buildings from the design side. We've got engineers and DIY sort of through multiple generations of the family. So being around building just happened a lot. So I think as I started to get interested in architecture at that age, I got really into the software side and modeling and being able to use computers to create things that I couldn't draw myself took me down a pathway. So pretty early on, I knew I wanted to do architecture, and there wasn't much convincing me that that wasn't going to happen.
So were you able to draw or do art? Because I find a lot of...
the straight lines.
Yeah, okay. Because a lot of it seemed to be the case that people that were into drawing sort of ended up in that design architecture space. But from the sound of it, the fact that computers could do that bit of it for you got you into a field that you possibly wouldn't have been in if it had been 10 years earlier or pre-computers.
Yeah, I think the computers did a lot of that for me. I do a lot of sketching, but it's not very scaled sketching and it's not very neat sketching. So I don't think I'd be able to do this job if I relied on hand drawing we used to have to do.
Yeah.
I did a bit of training in that at Unitech, but I was pretty glad that we were able to continue with computers as quickly as possible.
So you studied at Unitech. What qualification did you do?
So at Unitech, I did the National Diploma in Architectural Technology. I wasn't really sure coming out of high school whether I wanted to go through architecture or go into building or engineering. And because of that, I applied for a few things, but did the Architectural Technology Diploma. And parts of it I didn't particularly thrive in, and other parts of it I just got extraordinary joy from. So the design, the software, even sort of contracts and stuff really got me excited, just learning more about that side of the world.
Yeah, right.
And as I went through that course, by the end of it, I was pretty certain that the next step was to go on and do a bachelor's degree at Victoria University in Wellington.
So Unitech's in Auckland. So you're from Auckland originally, or?
Yeah, I grew up in Auckland, out in Howick area, and I didn't have any real thoughts about leaving Auckland until when I finished Unitech and decided Wellington was the next place to be with not too much thought behind it. I think there was about 2 weeks of planning, and then I was on a plane and getting ready to start at Victoria University.
My journey was the opposite way around. So I started work in Wellington, and my job, the company I was working for, decided they needed somebody in Auckland and they didn't need somebody in Wellington, and I was given a week's notice, 2 weeks notice, that you either haven't got a job or you're moving to Auckland. So I drove my Morris Hodgson van up from Wellington to Auckland, and been in Auckland pretty much ever since.
True.
And so was it the bachelor's would have 3 years? Or?
3 years. So I took a bit of a break there. I went through a similar journey to Unitech where some parts I didn't like and some parts I did. And so after my first year, I stopped and went and got my first job in the industry at Stevenson and Turner. And just thrived and loved that. And after a few years, went on to start doing urban planning and landscape and getting into BIM deliverables with Boffa Miskel, and learning more about the wide world of BIM and how detailed you can get and what over modeling is. So I went on a bit of a journey and then went back to study and did some landscape architecture and urban planning, and eventually came out of uni and went on to a design and building company. Focused on residential architecture.
And this is still in Wellington?
This is still in Wellington, and that was like a rocket ship. That was exciting. There was just a whole bunch of guys who didn't really know which way to go yet, and we were making up the business plan. So the two founders, Reese and Matt from Inline Design and Build, really gave me a lot of opportunity, trusted me with a lot, and let me figure out a lot of business skills as well as learning more about design and compliance, and even showing up and helping build the office a bit on the weekends and stuff. I wasn't very good at it, but it was great to be around builders and learn a lot more about the building side, not just being behind a computer drawing details.
And so they were designing the houses and actually constructing them as well?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, so Matt is the design lead of the company, and he brought me in, I think, because I was quite animated with my computer at Stevenson and Turner where I met him, and I was super into BIM and getting the best out of the software. So I think he saw something then and brought me in to support them.
So Stevenson and Turner are more in the big end of construction, are they? They're sort of more hospitals, universities, that sort of stuff?
Yeah, bigger stuff. Ministry of Education work, Ministry of Justice work. When I started there, they had a big contract with Southern Response, which was all housing work in Christchurch after the earthquake. So I got a lot of experience in residential in a very short space of time. I'd done about 70 homes in a year and a half before I started doing some Ministry of Education work and some commercial work in apartments and things. So pretty quickly I got a liking for what you could do with a house and residential, and learned a whole lot of styles of New Zealand's history, because Christchurch has got quite a lot of history too. It was quite an exciting place to be learning the start of my career in housing. And
I guess with the rebuild, you were matching existing designs, so you had to have an appreciation for the range of housing ages that were being repaired.
Yeah, there was a lot of that. It was a like for like was what we needed to do for most of it, and like for like was very expensive. If you had Oamaru stone, then trying to
plaster cornices or whatever.
Yep, trying to bring in those materials to match or brick sizes that don't exist anymore, you still had to try and match it, and there was a lot of strict control around communication. You couldn't pick up the phone and call anyone. It had to all be done through A-Connects is what we were using, so it was all tracked,
right?
Which really slowed things down. So that was a good learning experience to learn materials, learn how to integrate things, learn how to substitute where those things didn't exist anymore.
Yeah.
And just pay some respect to the history of all the different parts of Christchurch that have been there for a very long time.
Yeah. And it just sounds like a bit of process as well, that having that sort of process infrastructure, that's certainly something we have learned over the time of our business, is making sure we document discussions with clients, because 2 years' time they bring you up and say, why did you do this? And if you haven't made a note, you can't remember that it was them ringing up telling you to do it.
Yeah, it was definitely a lot of that, I think. So we had all the consultants on the one platform and everything ran through that, including document delivery and consents. It was great in some ways because there is such a rigid process, and you learn so much about how to track a project and make sure that nothing gets lost in the cracks. In other ways, I was at the beginning of my career and I found the slow movement.
Yeah.
I couldn't get over the pace of it being a frustration that I just wanted to go.
Yeah, and I guess that's one of the downsides of process, is that you have to follow the process if you want to get the value out of it. And so the key for me, because I'm a very process-oriented person, I guess, by nature, and it sounds like you're probably almost more of an engineer than an architect from listening to you. You're a bit process thinking as well. Is an important thing around the process is designing it so that it actually achieves the outcomes without sticking too much overhead over what you're doing. If it sticks too much overhead on, okay, it might achieve an outcome, but if it costs so much to achieve that outcome, then is the end result actually worth it? So trying to balance between the efficiencies you can get from a good process and just investing too much in the process itself. So it's quite a learning.
Yeah, it was a good period. All the jobs I've had have been very, very lucky that I've either been put into a job that has a lot of good process, or I've been in charge of building out that process, which I do enjoy quite a lot. Systems and processes is something I probably get too much enjoyment from. But I've been a part of building and creating those for a few companies, and then seeing that change and morph and develop into something better.
Yeah.
That's been just a real luck of the draw, I think, that I'm with people in those companies who trust me to create it and give me full autonomy to deliver on that part of the business. The place I worked before starting Modal, I got a lot of freedom to build out templates, systems, instruct and create the workflow that we used for our developments and townhouses. And that was actually more fun than the architecture because of the systemization you can get out of a townhouse is amazing. But after a while, once you've done it 3-4 times, the system is working so well, there's that sort of step back where you want to do the architecture again.
Yeah. Sort of the challenge is getting the systems going, and then once they're going, you need a new challenge to move on to. So what made you decide to go out and do your own thing then with Modal?
It started off with a small thought and itch in the back of my head some time ago that it would be nice to have my own business. A few people in my extended family have had businesses, and I think that's just something that I've noticed is they've had a lot more freedom than someone who might be able to just have a career working for someone. Not that there's anything wrong with either choice. I just think I was more interested in carving my own pathway. So I tried to start a business. I would have been 24. or 23 with my buddy, and that didn't work out. And we tried another one, and then I tried another. So there's been a few attempts that were false starts that didn't really ever get off the ground. They were almost a flat fall on the face before we got running. But once I got to starting Modal, I was already quite senior at Vauxhall where I used to work. And moving into a shareholder position was already on the table, but I was pretty upfront with Zach, who owns that business, that I think I needed to just do this for myself and carve my own pathway. And he was really good about that and sort of just
that's good.
said, you'll be great, you'll be fine. You're going to need to jump, because if you try and slowly build it, you won't get the best out of it. So we made the call that I would finish off a project deliverable, and then I was out to do Modal. And
so how long ago was that?
That was 2021 when I started that. So there was about a 4-month overlap where I had that discussion with him and got the business registered. And I had my first client before I had a laptop, which was, in hindsight, not a good move, but it got things moving quickly. And you learn very quickly what you can and can't promise when you don't have a laptop or a process or a template or really any way of delivering what you've said you will.
Yeah.
So that first client and the second and third and fourth, I think, were quite good learning curves to help me balance a little bit and not just jump as blindly as I was ready to. Yeah.
So to give us a little just pocket summary of what Modal is and what you do and how you work.
Yeah, so Modal Architecture is a bespoke residential architecture practice. We focus in on residential renovations and new builds. What we do is we go and listen to what you want, and we try and make sure that this is not just writing down and checking some boxes. We're looking for clients, and we're having clients come to us who are looking for more of a partnership. So we want to know a lot more about your hobbies, your kids, your dog, your cat, and figure out what it is that makes you tick a bit. And then we'll try and find a brief that matches the functional requirements of what you've talked about, but also a bit more of the lifestyle things that are harder to put into words. And then from there, we kind of just try to keep it easy as possible. So the process is cost verification constantly. And making sure that decisions are made for the bits that matter. We handle all of the messy compliance and the decisions that you're never going to see or experience, so that you can just focus on the outcome of your house.
So what sort of areas do you work in? What part of New Zealand are you based in? Where do you work? Yeah.
All over, yeah. It's been a lot of fun. Right off the bat, I made the decision that I wasn't going to stick in one location. So we started in Wellington, but very quickly we had clients in Auckland and Blenheim. And from there it went into Taranaki, Napier, Queenstown, Palmerston North, I think was one. But we've kind of moved around now, and we're a bit location agnostic. We've got offices in Auckland and Wellington, but I try to move around between where we're working. And that's largely for lifestyle, that I like traveling New Zealand. It's a beautiful country. So I like seeing New Zealand, and I also like just going and seeing the clients face to face. We could do video calls, but the sort of relationship we build is going and having dinner with our clients and understanding how they live much more deeply than if we just did a briefing.
Right. And so how many do you have in your wider team?
So there's 3 in the team, including myself. Or there's 4 actually. So my partner's in the business with me, and she does a lot of the business administration. And as a software developer, she's made a lot of automations and process improvements for me. And then I've got a graduate here in Auckland and a buddy of mine who's contracting, and he's been sort of in and out with me on various jobs for my whole career, and with Modal for the last 3 years.
Okay. So you got a bit of coverage across.
A bit of coverage, yeah. It's good having people local in Wellington, being that buddy of mine.
Yeah.
Just so that I can send him out if I can't jump on a plane. There's a few times where the cost of Air New Zealand flights has just not been worth it, so I send him on the way.
Yeah. So, what's your process for acquiring customers? So, you're obviously getting customers in different parts of the country. So, how do they hear about you? How do you promote yourself?
Yeah, very good question. This is a new one for me that I've only started really, really pushing marketing in the last 12 months. And that was largely because I wasn't really sure where we were going with the marketing. So originally I paid someone something like $100 to get me a list of 200 builders in New Zealand, and the criteria was owner-operator. So I cold called all of those builders around the country, and I went around and got beers and coffees and introduced myself and said, I'm starting a business and I'd love to have a crack at doing some work with you. I'll do any work to show you what we're capable of, what I'm capable of, and I hope that turns into more work. That has turned into quite a good referral network. So we've got about 7 builders around the country who are consistently referring us work now. They've seen how we work with them, not only with the client and with them and with early contractor engagement, but also on site.
Right.
We try to make sure that the client doesn't get the message that something's a big deal. Even if it is, we're here to try and make it easy. So if there is something that's a bit of a challenge, that workflow has made us quite a good partnership for those builders, and so they keep giving us work.
Yeah, right. So you cold called 100 builders across the country?
It was about 200, and I think about 130 or so I got through to.
Right.
And then of that, there was something like 70 that said yes to a beer or a coffee. So that first period was a lot of going out for beers and coffees and just trying.
Yeah.
And I had started using a platform called Builders Crack originally, just to get started. And now with the referrals that we're getting, plus our marketing, we've got a bit of momentum. And with all of the clients we've had, we're getting return clients now to do second houses or referring their friends for their houses.
Yeah. So it's numbers there. So 200, you got to talk to 130. Yeah. Out of that, it was 70 that actually sort of had meaningful conversations, and you've got 7 long-term relationships out of that 200.
Yep. Yeah, that's right.
So it shows that it's a big numbers game, isn't it? So, yeah.
Big numbers game. Yep. I didn't have a script as well. There's things you learn in business, and it would have been good if I had the same conversation with everyone.
Might have got more efficient.
But virtually every single one I was just calling, and being fresh into the business journey, I barely researched most of their businesses, so I was not prepared to actually talk to them about working together. So I'm probably quite lucky that I even got the 7.
But it sounds like you've got some solid relationships out of it. So what sort of builders so the 7 that you've ended up with, and I guess you've built a few more outside of that through the other relationships. So what sort of builders are you looking for to build relationships with?
All residential scales. I've worked with people who are just doing bathroom jobs only, and that's been a great small area of work to train graduates and upskill and have them learning process, right through to people doing $5 million new builds. So we've kind of got different pockets of scale in that building network, so that we're not necessarily just referring one builder onto a client or vice versa who's not necessarily the right fit. It's pretty important to us that we're not just referring someone we know to a client, we're referring the right person to the right client, and making sure that it's not going to have problems with pricing or building or experience, in much the same way that we're really good with residential housing. It's been a little while since I did Ministry of Education. I wouldn't be the best person to jump into Ministry of Education right now. Yeah. And so I wouldn't refer myself for that. I'd refer a buddy who does that.
Yeah. And so you take the same approach with the builders, as try and find somebody that's going to be a good fit for what that particular project and what you're looking to do with that one.
Yeah, that's right. So we have had more builders join us over time, and not all of them have worked out. I'm pretty open and trusting, and I found that talk goes a long way, and sometimes I've not had the right experience for a client, and so I'm a bit more guarded now with people sort of cold calling the same way that I did.
Yeah, right.
Because I'm putting them in front of my clients, and I expect them to treat my clients the way I treat my clients. That's almost going down the route of that we're in a friendship partnership where I happen to be designing their home, rather than a service offering where it's transactional.
So you heard about the disaster that I talked about with from a cost point of view. So how do you deal with, I guess, establishing that initial budget with the client? So you got a client coming to you, they want to achieve the world, they've got this much budget. So how do you start their discussion off with them?
So it goes a couple different ways I've found. There's either a very unrealistic budget to start with, or there's something relatively close, or they haven't even done the research. So I'll pick the small budget, big goals. We tend to, in those conversations, in our briefing, go back to say what you asked for isn't what you've talked about in money. Is that, your actual
which is
hard and fast budget? It will change. Is it your hard and fast budget? Have you been to a bank, or is this just a number that you pulled out of the air, or did you read an article from 2014 maybe? And from there we start to adjust. And sometimes those clients will still say, please go ahead and design what we want and we'll get it priced. And then we go through a process of removing. And for that, we say we need to do a must-haves list, a nice-to-haves, and a not-so-important, so that we can get through that journey and then start removing the things that we know we're going to get removed as part of that pricing exercise. I try to avoid that because it is just designing for the sake of designing, not so much delivering value for those clients. The ones that know what they can spend and they've done a bit of research and they know where to go with it, those clients are quite easy to work with. As they start to talk about more things, and I'm talking bigger budgets too, I've found the clients that are quite in touch with what money they've got to spend are working in the multiple millions. And so when they say we want something else and we say, yep, that's fine, but adding extra square meterage or going into that level of luxury does add cost, generally they're okay with it because they've already gone through that process of deciding how much they're going to spend, and it's a fraction more, not a deal breaker for them.
So one comment that sort of when we had a bit of a debrief with the builder after that one was that the things moved so quickly sort of post-COVID that we sort of had 15, 20, 25% increases a year. So over a short period of time, the whole base sort of changed. And we're sort of wondering how much people have grasped that. So whether it's homeowners grasping the change, but also from the design community. How do you sort of keep up with where things are at? How do you get a feel for what you can actually achieve? Because what you could achieve now for a budget is very different to what it was 5 years ago. But if you looked at 2015 versus 2020, it wouldn't have changed that much. So how are you handling that sort of shift?
It's a real challenge. I have had a shift in the way I communicate with my clients that we cannot design to your budget up front. It's just not something I'm comfortable committing to. And so if it's wildly out, if you're talking about $1 million and you have 500,000, that's big enough that I can clearly tell
roughly that's going to be that sort of money that you're spending.
But getting down into the finer details,
it was 500 versus 700. You couldn't really tell.
Too close, and I'm not comfortable committing to that. So we go through a process to say we'll do a preliminary design and then we'll get it priced before we make any tweaks, changes. And if you don't want us to do that pricing step, you need to accept that if we make more changes into concept, it might be more than what we originally spoke about. So getting it priced right after the first design step and then making changes with that number and knowing what that is helps a huge amount. And then getting it repriced, we try to do it 3 times, but often it is just that first step and building. But we try to encourage 3 times. So that would be preliminary design, at the end of concept design, and before we submit the building consent because of the cost of building consents. And normally that is with our early contractor engagement at that stage.
So you start to involve the builders at that sort of pre-consent stage?
We bring them in at concept and belt design so that they can start feeding back into what our process is for, is there better ways to build it that doesn't cost so much? Their labor time is really important.
Yeah.
So if we can design something, there's one way I'll detail it and there's another way they would like it to be built that has the same outcome for the client. So we get them involved early so that we can get a bit of feedback from them and make sure that they're the right fit for the client as well.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
It doesn't always work out. Sometimes the client has asked to go to someone else and we've recommended other builders. Or sometimes that builder's got too much in their pipeline and so they've had to pull out and we've got other builders in and done negotiated tenders and things.
Yeah, because obviously there's a timing element to it as well. Because builders can only do so many projects and they've obviously got to keep talking to a whole lot of them because then it might, when and if they come to fruition and then as they start coming together, they may clash.
Yeah, that's right. So it's good having the network of builders for that as well because, there's a couple of builders in Wellington that are actually mates as well. So they know I'm talking to both of them they're both like, give it to me. But it's ultimately up to the client for what they think is the best fit. I try to encourage that a personality fit is going to make more difference than the dollar figure, unless it's hundreds of thousands. The personality fit makes the journey better.
So do you actually use the tender process very often?
Not in great detail. We do negotiated tenders with early contractor engagement. So normally we do, by the time we're doing tendering and negotiated tendering, we've just got the one builder engaged for that and the client's directly engaging them. And we're just there to provide advice and support rather than manage that process.
I've never been particularly a fan of the sort of cold tender process because maybe in commercial and obviously government, that's the rules they have to do it. But I think ultimately it's the relationship is more important than anything. And it doesn't matter if they're the cheapest price. Well, how often would you actually go with the cheapest price in a tender process anyway? But even if they weren't, if you haven't got that relationship there, it doesn't really guarantee a good outcome. Whereas I think the way you're doing it is more likely to, it's not going to guarantee a good outcome. So I think, sure, things still go wrong, but I think it's more likely to guarantee or give a good outcome. So.
Yeah, I think the greatest success of it is because those are not just strictly professional relationships. I'm catching up with them. I'm meeting their families. I've talked to them socially. It does mean when hard things happen and difficult conversations need to occur, there's not so much of the historical builder-architect fight. It's more just a conversation about
how do we deal with
what went wrong, why did it go wrong, how do we get to the next step? And it's about the client experience. What can we do once again, even if it means a variation for the client, what can we do to make this as seamless as possible for them? And that's worked really well time and time again.
That to me makes complete sense in terms of I guess it's my preferred way of operating and how much of business comes down to relationships and how effective outcomes are is how well those relationships are able to deal with issues on the way through. So when it comes to designing to the budget, what sort of things have you seen unintentionally cause a budget blowout? So when things have gone wrong, is there any sort of common things you can point a finger at that causes them?
Consistently floor area increases.
Right.
There's no way around this. If you're trying to reduce your construction cost,
make it smaller
is the way to do it. You are not going to substitute $200,000 of products out of your project. That needs to come out of floor area somewhere. So pretty consistently, if we've done a preliminary design, and in the earlier days, I wasn't very good at being a bit more blunt with clients. If we had done a design and it came in right on where they wanted to spend, they sort of went, we could go further now because we can go to the bank and get more. And the problem there is, of course, prices go up. And as you go bigger, the contingencies also have to go bigger. And by the time we got to building, they were still able to go ahead, but they were very, very stretched. It happens time and time again that we've got to now sort of be a bit more blunt and say, you are going to have to keep it where it is, because by the time we've got the approved consent, that price is going to have moved, and you might not be able to go just back to the bank and get that extra money.
Yeah, when we do
lock it in.
Preliminary estimates, we often say the range is sort of -5 plus 15. With the -5 is very rarely do things cost less than you expect or are simpler than you expect, and invariably there's some extra thing or extra cost or extra beam or whatever. So it's always on the upside. It's very rarely on the downside. It's when you get to the end of it, actually pricing it properly.
Yep. Yeah, we've actually got a client now that chose not to do pricing at preliminary. They wanted to push it through to concept, and we've made some pretty big changes, including square meterage being added. So it was communicated that this will add cost, and I was already pretty certain this wasn't going to be a easy project to meet their investment requirements. So I think the next step will have a bit of a difficult conversation about going backwards one step or going back to the bank to see what they can go to.
Yeah.
It's unfortunate that sometimes you see these patterns emerging, but you can't always guide people to take what is the right step. You have to let them take that step themselves.
So one of the things we're working towards, which has been, I guess, part of my vision all along, is the concept of real-time costing. So while you're doing your design, giving you some sort of costing feedback. So, and fingers crossed, if things go well, we'll actually have that this year. So that's sort of the technology we've been building towards.
Sign me up.
So yeah. So what sort of impact do you think it would have if you knew while you were doing that initial preliminary design, you were starting to get a feel for cost while you were doing it? How would that change the way you work, or how you think about things?
I think that would be a phenomenal tool to have. I don't know that I'd want it while I'm designing live, because I think I'd get distracted and watch it going up.
Yeah, and I call it live. It'll probably be you'll decide when you want to trigger it, because it is going to require some additional information over what you might be doing for the concept.
Yeah.
So you don't want to be re-putting all of that in. So you'll basically work away and get to a point, decide, okay, I want an understanding now, do a bit of work, you wait some
That would be
time.
fantastic. Yeah. I have thought for a while about how that would work, and it might not be so much about materials and seeing the price is this price, but if there were helpful tips, like what I've learned from working with builders closely is if you were doing a large open plan kitchen, living, dining, and you want to have an exposed gable and a beautiful timber ceiling, putting in a ridge beam and all of the structure and bracing constraints around that is very expensive.
Yeah.
You could go ahead and put in a scissor truss instead, which is dramatically less money, and you still get that same exposed ceiling inside.
The same vaulted feel to it.
Same vaulted feel, yeah. If you could have tips that are not just pricing, but almost design-led with some machine learning or AI or something that says you've done this type of design, what's the structure? If you select this or this, it would feed out two different prices.
Yeah.
That is something in my mind that I think would be extremely powerful.
I'm not quite sure we'll be there yet. We actually, with AUT, we're actually looking at a couple of research projects with them. So we've got a database of close to 4,000 houses. And what we're looking to do is, can we connect AI to it? And instead of, because the moment with AI from an estimating point of view, one of the big challenges we have as estimators is getting reliable pricing information, and it's actually really difficult. It's so many suppliers and manufacturers treat it like a state secret, and so one of our challenges is that, and yet AI, that's all it can do is go and troll for stuff on the internet, and so the quality of it's got to be questionable. So what we're trying to explore is if we connect an AI to our database of buildings, now whether 4,000 is enough, I don't know, but potentially, could we plain language query that database and answer those sort of questions? Don't know. Well,
that would be amazing.
Yes, that's a bit.
Subscribe.
That's a maybe, that one. But being able to connect it to the model and give you more meaningful price information quickly is what we're working towards. So more algorithm driven rather than AI. So it should give you a heads up. It won't necessarily maybe answer all the things you want answered, but
I think it would be incredibly powerful. Even if you did an interim test internally only, I can see the benefit, especially with members of a team who don't have as much experience or haven't done as much with builders, where they're getting told ways to be doing things more efficiently to get the same outcome. that would be a very powerful tool to just see if you're even going the right direction for the sort of lesser experienced people who are still outstanding designers.
Yeah, so I guess, we've still got a few, we got the core sort of idea working, but we've definitely got a few issues that we don't know the answers to yet. There's definitely a few unknowns, but I think we're on the right path. So it's good to hear that you think it'll have some use to you. So.
I'd definitely take a look at that.
Right. So you commented about buildability. So what would be an example of, or can you think off the top of your head of an example of something where, something that you thought was a good design versus something that's buildable, and ways of achieving the sort of outcome that you desire, but effectively in a more cost-effective way?
Yes, I'll start with back in my time at the design and build company. I worked on a project where we dug out a basement and made that into a new habitable room. And the poor apprentices who were working on that job gave me a bit of stick because we could not get machines in. So it was a hand dig out. And understanding the human side of building, that if you're designing something, how is someone going to get into the space and do it? Not just them physically, but their tools as well. Yeah. With what you've designed, can they actually get a nail gun into that space? Can they get themselves into that space?
And it's really nail gun, and you probably struggle to hammer it as well.
Exactly, yeah. Or if you're doing, really nice detailing with flashings, have you thought about how they're actually going to get that in beyond just the weather tightness? I think earlier in my career, I probably did a lot of weather tightness flashing details that were totally functional for weather tightness, but would have been no better on site, which is a shame. But the buildability side, I think, is getting that feedback early. There's been a lot of things that I've thought would be designed and detailed really beautifully one way, and as I've talked through that with the builder at early contractor engagement stage, they've suggested some different ways to get the same visual outcome, and it just becomes less labor time, which is obviously a huge part of construction cost, easier, less risk generally as well, because there's less components to it. So it does cause a bit of a step back, know what your skills are. A builder is very good at building. A designer is good at designing. A QS is great at pricing. And so if you lean on those skill sets, you'll get a better outcome as well for the client. And buildability is a big part of that for Modal, is making sure that we're not just designing things that are going to be difficult, and we're not perfect. It's happened, but we've taken that feedback and changed the way we work as time has gone on.
Yeah, and that's really a vital part of what we do. Is I've had a few conversations the last few days talking with builders and designers on projects around the outcomes, and sometimes the outcomes from a cost point of view hasn't come out to what we said it was going to come out to. So I'm really keen to unpick those, because looking at we're very process driven. So is there anything we could have done in our process that picked up whatever that issue was, or was there an issue? Getting that feedback on what actually happened is vital. And I guess it's similar for you. Like, how often would you? It sounds like you have pretty good relationships, so you often hear about the outcome, because a lot of designers we work with, and a lot of the projects we work on, we never actually hear A, whether it went ahead, and B, if it did go ahead, what was the end result. So with your designs, how often do they actually end up getting built, and how often do they come out cost-wise sort of where you expected them to be?
So how often they get built, as we've gained momentum, most of them go the full path. In the earlier days where we were just sort of taking everything and anything, quite a lot of those went through a process, got to consent, got pricing, sat for a bit. When they were ready to build, the price had changed so much they never went ahead. And I'm
especially if you start
6 months, 12 months, it wasn't a long time for that price to go out of budgets in 2021, 2022. The cost changes, there's been a few cost changes along the projects. Those largely have been just because of the duration and the time period that we're in. We've got a project which is a 400 square metre home in the Wairarapa, or along the coast, that's been in construction since 2022. And it's not that it will take that long to build. They're just doing a bit of a family owner operator sort of building job with their son's company. Yeah. So because it's been in build for so long, that budget has significantly grown just because of the amount of time that's gone on.
Yeah, and it seems like even, obviously there's be some cost increases on material costs or some trades through that time, but the longer a project takes, it just seems to cost more no matter what. Yeah, so whether, I don't know whether it's going back and having the time it takes to go back and reestablish yourself on site, every time you do that, it adds another 10 grand or whatever. And if it's the same for all of the sub trades, I guess that's part of what tends to blow it out. So it's better to get it started, do it as fast as you can, get it finished.
Yep. Yeah, definitely.
Whether it's stopping price increases over that duration or just the fact that the longer it goes, the more it blows out.
Yeah, I've had a few where people have opted to stay in their house when we've done a renovation extension, and I always tell people not to do this. Yeah. You're not saving money. It's going to take more time.
Yeah. And we've actually got a factor in our system. So if we know the clients, are they away? Are they home during the day? Are they home at night? And we basically allow extra time for the builder tidying up and making it safe. Yep. Because you might have a stairwell that's open or whatever, and if they've got kids, you've got to put plywood over every day, and the next day you've got to lift it up again.
It's a lot of labour time.
Yeah.
A lot of labour time.
Yeah. We don't always know, unfortunately, but if we know, that's a setting we can make in ours, and we start allowing time for it.
That's good to know. I might be telling you that. We try to advise people not to, but that has historically for us seen the price increase over time, where the project drags out, losing hours in the morning and the evening every day. Yeah. As far as outcomes, I am pretty proud of the way we keep in touch with clients, whether we're engaged for site support and observations or not. I keep in touch with the clients and make sure that, if there's anything that they want to talk about that is not going to have any implications for observations work we're not engaged for, I'm happy to just talk and hear how they're going, hear how the relationship is with the builder. There's only been one or two times they've wanted to try and move that into a conversation where I would be crossing a line that I would need to have a contract in place for. And I've just sort of said that's the next step if you would like me to be involved for that.
Yeah.
Otherwise, I just keep in touch. I still keep in touch with clients that are, well finished their projects, just to see how they're enjoying the space, what they would change now that they've lived in it themselves for a while. And that's actually a great way to get new work as well, because you keep in touch with them. It's more than just a transactional relationship, and a few of them have gone on to their next homes and come back to say we want to do another renovation, and we also know a bit more about what we want this time. So it's been a good way to understand the outcome, understand what we could have done better without it being a failure on anyone's part, and also get more work.
Yeah. And I guess, if you're keeping in touch, you'll be top of mind if any of their friends ask about somebody to help out. So it's good from that point of view. So one thing we hear a lot talk about is high performance housing. So this house project that was opened with was a high performing home. So they were doing SIPs. It wasn't quite passive, but it was sort of up at that end. So I understand you do a bit of work in that sort of space as well. So what would you define as a high performing home?
A high performance home is a low energy home, and it's got mechanical ventilation so that you have fresh filtered air coming in, and the air that is no longer clean is being taken out. The reason they're low energy is because they are extremely well sealed and insulated. It's not just the insulation, it's sealing the house up as well to make sure that air is not moving in a way you don't want it to. You're mechanically controlling that. I've very recently stopped talking about this as high performance homes.
Okay.
And it's because Damien McGill does a lot of high performance and passive homes out of Christchurch.
Right.
He said high performance sounds like a sports car, and there's an association that high performance costs money. There is no way around it that building a better home does cost more money.
Yeah.
But I've tried to change the narrative, especially with families, about the health benefits, that you're literally creating a better home for yourselves. Yeah. It's a huge investment. So really the slight increase in that investment for a floor area sacrifice, for instance, is a very good move to make.
Yeah.
You won't regret doing that. And, seeing a storm outside and being comfortable in shorts and a t-shirt without having a heater on. There's nothing quite like that. That's a pretty amazing experience. So that's high performance homes and how I've started to communicate.
So have you got another term you've come up with? Or?
Not really. High performance is still in the vocab, but I'm trying to change from saying high performance homes are these wonderful buildings into the health benefits and the energy benefits.
Yeah, so I was going to ask questions about sort of the difference, what cost premium it adds, but I think that is the wrong question to be asking, because you basically what you're talking about is the value you get out of living in this house, and making it smaller, you could still end up with the same value, and it actually doesn't cost you anything. It's where you compromise. Do you compromise in the quality of living, the quality of the materials in the house, the thermal performance, the lifetime cost, or do you compromise a little bit in space, or do you compromise on the amount of money you spend in total? It's sort of all of those different levers you can pull to end up with an outcome. It's sort of which set of levers you want to pull to give you the outcome that's acceptable to you. So it's not about cost premiums, it's about how you end up with the outcome you want.
Yep, that's right. I've been asked a fair few times when I've tried to guide clients to high performance, and a lot of the time that's not worked out. The conversation that does it cost more is really not the right conversation. Yeah. The minimum standard
what's the square meter rate
code is not great quality building, and unfortunately the minimum standard is something that gets aimed for because you can go and build that.
Yeah.
So you can't really compare in the same way I just said high performance as a phrase is like a car. You can't compare a Corolla and a Ferrari. They're different things. They're different ends of the spectrum.
Yeah.
So if you want a better home and you want a healthier place for your family to live, it is a different product that you're going for.
Yeah, it makes sense. So do you have any preferences in terms of construction systems or products where you're looking to try and build these higher performing, high quality houses?
Yeah, for high performance, I share an office with Flexi House in Wellington. Andre started that about 7 years ago, and that's a cool product.
I haven't heard of that one. So what's that?
Traditional construction in terms of the framing and your RAB boards, your rigid air barriers and your cavity systems, but it's all done as a prefab panel system. So they're weather tight in 13 to 16 hours. I think 13 hours is their record for weather tight construction so far in Cromwell. So that is a really good system because it's finished except for your interiors very quickly, and they've got different versions. So they've got just a frame prefab, and then they've got what they've called a cassette, and then they've got a full clad version. And because it is designed freely and use the system to meet that design, it's a pretty great and easy system to use. I've used SIPs as well, and I like them. They're very easy to work with. But there's not necessarily a specific brand or business. Those are just the ones I've used. I try to lean into what is best for the client, best for their investment needs, best for what they've asked for their family and whatnot. So if that means that we have to go towards traditional construction because of cost implications, or if it means we reduce square meterage, or if it means we do exactly what they want with a SIPS or a flexi panel, fantastic. So we just find what's the best fit for the client rather than trying to push it down
any particular direction. Yeah, sounds good. So we've had quite a bit of talk about this whole granny flat thing, which I think is now in place. What do you see that changing the world? Yeah.
No, not especially. I did quite a lot of research on this as it came out and thought there was a real opportunity. And as I did more research, I started to see that the sites that would be suitable for this are a bit few and far between by the time you look at the hazards on sites and flooding and all sorts of triggers for resource consent.
And the boundary locations.
Yeah. So I think because there's a bit of uncertainty around where the ownership of risk lies, if a homeowner just goes ahead and does this without any professional advice, they've already broken rules, but they might not know that based on what's been in the media. So I think there's a bit of risk that if they tried to sell that house and they got a notice to fix, that's a big cost all of a sudden. If they came to
prove that it's compliant after the fact,
that's right.
Big challenge.
It's very challenging. If they came to me, I think for the fractional cost of a building consent, if it didn't need resource consent, I would be interested in taking them down that pathway just to say, just because you can do it this way and do this reduced consenting option doesn't mean it's the right option.
Yeah.
I've spoken to my insurance company as well, and there's uncertainty about what advice you can give and what you're covered for if you're not being engaged for a full service. So I would be telling people to just go to your professionals and pay for the service. It's a marginal cost relative to the cost of construction.
Yeah, my feel for it is we're talking in like 20, 40 Rand type range of what's potentially going to be taken out, which if you're building a $200,000-$400,000 house, how much risk do you want to take to save that sort of money? It's not.
It doesn't seem like the numbers add up to me. I don't think I would do it personally, not till there's more information.
So it's another one of these things where the story sounds good, but the reality is a different place to where the story is. I guess another one, it's a sort of similar question, is the changes the government or MBs have been making around product substitution. So what's your thoughts on sort of what impacts they're going to have?
I think it's going to be great, really great for New Zealand. So the big issues I've found is consistently prices keep going up. They never go down really. If they do, they come back up quickly. The big established brands, rightly so in some areas, have a higher price tag because they've got a really reputable brand. So I think because the cost of building is so high, as other products are available to come into the market and go through a consenting process, more competition might drive some prices down, or it might shake things up a bit. I've already seen some products coming in and the prices are extremely favorable to use a similar product that's not got the big shiny brand. I don't know what I'm mentioning.
No, fair enough.
But there's some really interesting products coming in that look fantastic and they are very cheap.
And so with the granny fact, one of the thing was the hooks is sort of risk and liability. How do you think that's going to work with imported products? Because the obvious advantage of the established brands is they are established, they're here, they've got a presence, they've got an impact if things go wrong, if they don't deal with it. If you've got somebody importing maybe a branded product in France or America or whatever, but if the presence here is pretty light, they might not be that invested in their presence. So if there's an issue, where's the risk now starting to move to?
There is more risk. There's no denying that. There is more risk in it because there isn't that immediate substitution or local presence to actually fix that problem. Because we've got the 10-year weather tightness here in New Zealand, if something did go wrong in 3 years, they've decided it's not a good enough market for them. I think that's the bigger risk, is not them being slow to respond, but if they just pull out of the market altogether.
And I guess that's what I'm implying is my feel is it's likely to be smaller businesses without a lot of substance. So if they have a job or two go bad, the easiest answer for them would be just disappear.
Yeah. I think there's a bit of risk in that. I think some of the risk is not necessarily large enough risk to worry about. Everything that I do at Modal is rigid air barrier, cavity system. So if it was a cladding system, for instance, the risk of that failing beyond the cladding cavity rigid air barrier is quite low. So for something like a cladding system, I'm quite comfortable taking that risk alongside the client and just letting them know that this is not an established brand and we're substituting out brand X for new brand to meet their investment requirements.
Yeah. But maybe something more into it, like a window would be something for me, I'd be a bit more nervous about.
Yeah, windows.
It's a bit harder to change a window.
I think windows, you need to stick with what's got good history, especially in New Zealand where we've got quite challenging climate conditions. We're pretty close to the water everywhere in New Zealand, so making sure that we're not bringing in products that aren't suitable for New Zealand, like windows, and I think there was glazing or aluminium joinery, one of those in the media recently.
Okay.
I'd probably steer away from where we've historically had weather tightness failures, like window junctions.
Yeah, I guess like any risk, it's sort of, there's a number of aspects to it. So what's the risk of it happening?
Yeah.
And then if it did happen, what's the consequences of it happening? And so it may be a higher risk, but the consequences aren't so bad. So that you take that risk, or it may be a low risk, but the consequences are really bad. So you may not want to take that risk. So it's basically looking at that whole decision. And I guess that the key will be, how mature are homeowners and designers and the building industry at understanding those sort of decisions that they're making. So the shiny bottom line may or may not be a shiny bottom line in 10 years' time.
Yeah, definitely needs to be a bit informed. If it's $1,000 difference on a $1 million project, $400,000 project, don't roll the dice on that. It's more if you're saving $20,000, $30,000, $40,000 at a time. Those sort of bigger costs, there's some pretty remarkable louver systems that have practically zero risk coming in that are absurdly cheap compared to some of the big brand louver systems. Yeah. And decisions like that, I'd run it by the client, but I would be steering them heavily in favor of the newer systems that's coming out of different parts of the world. Yeah. There's, I think, a lot of opportunity.
That's good. Well, we've covered a lot of ground today. So are there any other burning issues or things that we haven't touched on that you might like to raise?
Not from me, no. I think that covered probably quite a lot.
It's been a good discussion.
Thank you for having me.
Well, thanks for listening, people. I hope you enjoyed the discussion today with Sam from Modal Architecture. So if you want an architect who's really invested in the process and really engaged with his clients to achieve the outcome they want, then definitely have a talk with Sam. If you want a QS that really understands the costs and processes and looks to improve how you achieve your building outcomes, then talk to your QS. And if you enjoyed this, then make sure you subscribe so you can hear the next one. Thanks.